All right. So I am, yeah. Decompression room slides. Anybody? I get it. I probably should pull those up and start showing them, right? So how's the weather in Haarlem, Arne?
The weather in Haarlem is it's very nice at the moment. It's very good. It's warm and it's kind of a little bit cloudy, but it's okay.
What's the weather forecast, Arne?
It's great, getting better. It's getting more sunny. Some clouds, I think, during the weekend, but the rest of the week looks really, really, very nice.
What's the shipping forecast, Arne?
Lots of ships. A lot of ships. There are many ships being predicted, especially over the weekend. Ships coming from all over the world, especially from south and north and west.
Yeah.
Not many ships from the east. German ships are not really coming over.
Not so many German ships.
Not many German ships.
Well, there's this thing, the shipping forecast. If anybody knows, in the BBC, I think it's the World Service does the shipping forecast, and it's really it's just amazing to listen to, because it talks about, it like goes all around the Great British Isles, right? And it goes from like all around the borders and says what the shipping forecast is. So light winds at da-da-da, and it's always the same sequence. So it's one of those, it's a ritual.
All right, I'll tune into that from now on.
Cool. Welcome, Jenny. Welcome, Michael. Welcome, Mimp. How are you? Zamina.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Michael.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
I love the shipping forecast.
I figured there would be somebody. Yeah. Isn't it awesome?
And there was last year, some famous people had to learn how to do it.
Right. Because the sequence, you have to remember all of the names of
north
these really
at Sierra, side at Sierra, 5 heading north, 40 gale 2.
Go, keep going.
Don't want to turn you on so early in the morning.
Shipping
is the shipping forecast an aphrodisiac? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. How can you keep so much information in such a monotone voice?
Right. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. We should, somebody remind me to put shipping forecast in the follow-up email.
Yeah,
link to shipping forecast.
It's a new thing for me. So
yeah.
All right, good.
Cool. So we are in the decompression zone, waiting for our friends to return from wherever they are in the world.
Yeah. So how's the how's the vacation planning for everyone going? So Mark, you returned. That was you went. Are you going? That was your American holiday, right? So
no,
what was it? The 2 days?
Yeah, it was 10 days, but it went by
luxury.
Really quickly. It was nice. It was beautiful. Yeah. The mountains of North Carolina.
Yeah.
So our lake house, our house is on a lake that's 1,000 meters in the air. So
how do you get up there?
Yeah.
Like with a ladder?
Yeah.
Or do you have like an elevator or something?
We have cars here.
You need like a balloon. You get 1,000. That's like
it's yeah. But it no, it's beautiful. It was wonderful. It's in a subtropical rainforest, essentially. So it rains up there a fair amount. But we had a beautiful week. We had a little bit of rain, but not that much.
Mark, can I give you this huge compliment that you biked up for more than 10 minutes, you said last time, and making the picture, showing us what you did to get some reception to see
Yeah.
last week's gem.
Well, I have to admit, Yunyan, it wasn't just to come on to the session, but I did tune in because I had to get to the top of the mountain in order to get reception, because where our lake is, there's no cell reception.
Good,
My
good
internet
for
had
you.
gone out. So, yeah,
That's a good.
but thank you for that. It was a wonderful. Yeah, I did some biking. So we have a few more minutes before we get started. And this time we have Sarah Harrison and Mark O'Brien back with us for the second session. We're super happy to have them back. And I suppose most of the folks on the call are, some of them, many of them, almost all of them, if not all of them, look familiar, may have been here last week and had their homework assignments. But we didn't have to do the homework to have fun this week. So,
You know, I read in the chat that Michael made brioche. I think we should complain to Zoom that they are still not able to make it possible that we can exchange brioche.
yeah, I would add to that I would like to just have the teletransporting button. I think
Yes.
that would be helpful as well.
Or the
Yes.
smell. The smell is the best thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We can visualize it, so therefore it is
It is.
possible.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Cool. All right. A couple more minutes. I'm going to hand it over to you, Arna, for just a second.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, because I have, I'm noticing that so my vacation starts next week, sort of, which is a weird time because of the COVID-19 situation. Because so it's like, so here, if you're not in Europe, and in Europe, they kind of opened the borders. At least we can go to France and vacation if we want to. But a lot of us are thinking about, do we actually go? What if we are? I just talked to a colleague of mine who had planned to go on vacation to Greece, and but they're always, everybody's kind of worried, like, what if we go there and then they close the borders? What happens then? So we're kind of thinking about picking a location that would be okay to kind of be in a lockdown. Like, what would be the best? So if you would be in a lockdown somewhere else, where would you want to go? So I suppose. So what's your choice? Where do you want to be?
Looks like there's some sort of technical problem.
Somebody's having some technical problems.
Yeah. So Yunyan, where would you like to have your lockdown this summer?
Where would I go then?
With us all together.
True, my second home in Mexico. Yes, right next door to Jimena.
Thank you.
So where would you?
And then taking over the gem, Jimena, taking over.
Oh, very well, yeah. But I think that like my bosses, because I was like, I'm happy you're doing this, so now I have like new activities.
Aha. They want some ideas from us.
Hang on.
I think they're just like telling me like switching to other things. Like
Ja, ik ga het proberen. Ja. Oké.
Savage lessons.
Nee, je hoeft niet te weten.
No.
We probably can go ahead and get started. It's the top of the hour, and I know some people will be trickling in as we go through. So we're really psyched about having. Oh, that's the wrong person. It is not Sylvia.
Yeah,
But
that's confusing.
that's really confusing. I don't know how that happened. But hey, come on back. I think we have Mark and Sarah here. I had to reload my deck. So we have Sarah Harrison and Marc O'Brien, who are joining us today in the second of a 2-part series on bringing your purpose to your work. And last week's session was awesome, but you didn't have to be part of last week's session to enjoy this week's session. But we will be following up and connecting to the homework that you guys were given in that session. And just to remind everybody, we're in a just the logistics slide. Don't read it. It's nothing about it. But I think everybody has been here. But for those of you who haven't been part of a web jam before, this is a meeting format, not a webinar format. So you can have your video on. We encourage you to have your video on. And but when you're not speaking, if you could kindly go on mute, that's awesome. We will, in today's session, be going into breakout rooms once. We'll also be using the chat. So if you haven't fired up your chat, go ahead and do that now. Introduce yourself, and we'll get started. So cool. I will now just quickly take a moment to introduce our speakers formally. So Marc O'Brien is based in San Francisco. He can tell you where he actually physically is today because I didn't ask him. And we have Marc O'Brien and Sarah Harrison. And the story behind that is, in a way, we invited Marc because I met Marc a couple of years ago at a design session. We have some friends in common, including John Bielenberg, who is one of our coaches for our design thinking boot camp that we do through the DT Academy. Marc and Sarah founded an organization called The Determined. It's a firm that does purpose-based design work. They are self-proclaimed, and I think the corners of the phrase climate designers, which is very interesting purpose to work on climate issues. And they are going to pretty much take the reins for the rest of the session this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, depending on where you are. Marc, Sarah, over to you guys.
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. How's everyone doing on this fine, what is it, Wednesday? Jeez.
What is it, Wednesday?
Okay, let me get my share screen on.
Yeah, we're really excited to be here for part 2 of bringing your purpose to work.
Yeah, so Sarah, why don't you kick us off?
Cool. You get to man the slides.
Yes. Welcome back,
Oh,
y'all.
good. Some of you did homework. Okay, so welcome back to part 2. Let's go to the next slide. We are the Determined, as Marc kindly introduced us. Let's just dive in. So last week we were talking about finding your passion, and today we're going to talk about turning that passion into your life's work. So what the heck does that mean? We had some homework. Last week we talked about all sorts of different purposes. Ours is related to climate. We talked about diversity and other social impact issues. So whichever issues, purpose, passions you chose, the homework was to gather 3 current data points so that you could measure what's going on with your chosen passions. That might be in news articles, blogs, statistics from existing organizations that are working on that issue, any data points that you could find so that you can measure your passion in real numbers. And I'll give you an example with the story that I told last time. So I had told that before the Determined, I was a UX designer in tech, so a software designer. And I was also designing systems that help make teams more efficient. It was a very stressful job. We were working 60+ hours a week, startup life. That's pretty typical. And so I was kind of burning myself out, not kind of, like completely burning myself out. It was, go ahead to the next slide. My health was failing. I was having chronic pain. And at the same time, the IPCC was coming out with reports that climate change was still a pretty big deal. And I kind of made the connection that consumerism was destroying the planet. I was working on consumer products. And so I was sort of connecting my stress and chronic pain and burnout. I was basically killing myself for a company that was also destroying the planet. Just that no longer worked for me. So what I ended up doing was quitting my job, co-founding The Determined with Marc, which is completely focused on the climate problem. Next slide. And so if I were to do that homework for me, the problem that I found was that product manufacturing was causing a lot of pollution. And so in order to go and do some research to do my homework, I went to a couple of different websites and I found that around 8 gigatons of carbon dioxide emissions could be related to industry product manufacturing. Oops. As well as 8 million tons of ocean plastic waste and 27 million tons of landfill waste. So these numbers are very specific, and having these measurements available helps you, you know, as I move forward in my career, I can ask myself, does every decision that I make lower these numbers? And another thing that you can ask yourself, go ahead to the next slide. So that was what the bad was going on, was 8 million tons of carbon dioxide being emitted into the year. What does the world look like when it's resolved, when it's good? And so what that looks like to me is, instead of products being produced and then thrown away 6 months later, products are produced with a longer lifespan. Maybe products are produced with biodegradable materials, so that when they are thrown away, they actually biodegrade instead of sticking around in the ocean forever. And those kinds of things they have names and terms like the circular economy, cradle to cradle. You can watch documentaries and stuff. So you start to really educate yourself on your topic. And then how can I use my skills personally to help create that world? If you recall, I was making teams more efficient in my previous job. And so once I quit and work with clients, I am making them more efficient and just making sure that I'm working with clients that have a really positive mission to start to make that circular economy a reality. So that is the homework in a nutshell. I heard a couple of comments in the chat for people who did the homework already. If you didn't, that's okay, but we would love to hear from a couple of you who did. Just share us what it is that you're seeing in the world that you're currently passionate about, what's going on as far as the measurable data that you found, and what does it look like when that's resolved, or how can you use your skills to help? Would anyone like to share out?
I think that something that I'm very passionate about, it's well, like sex education, but I was reading more went to like the skills. So this part of have like undeveloped countries. So like, well, maybe developed ones, they already have challenges, but what's going to happen on developing ones? Like, will the gap become wider, and what will be challenging in this case for us, and how can not that happen, right? And just have it more in mind too. So that's one.
Nice. Do you have any data points on how big that gap is and what it looks like when it's smaller?
Let me just.
That's the tough part, right?
Yes, I can have the article, but just I can share. I can share the link.
Nice.
More exciting use that part, but
yeah, that's great. That's great. Any other volunteers want to share? I think that's the hardest part is a lot of us who are purpose driven can talk about this problem. We can see the problem in our heads and conceptualize it, but can we measure it? And I think that's really important. If you can measure it, then you know whether or not you're changing it.
I'll share.
Great.
Is that okay?
Yeah, come on in.
So I'm really passionate about building bridges between cultures and people and anti-racism.
Awesome. Any way to narrow that down, or is there any specific field that you want to build a bridge in?
Ooh, I hadn't gotten to that point. Well, I'll tell you one thing. It was general, but right now I'm working on an IDEO project that's the whole thing about, after you gave me that statistic, 3%, I was like,
Yes.
I'm taking that, improving, bringing more Black designers into the field. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm concentrating on
That's
for my
great.
class, the course
Perfect.
I'm taking. So that was
Yeah,
a
so
very
last week-
useful statistic for me.
Last week we said that that there's a statistic out there that the amount of designers who are Black is measured at 3%. So yeah, that's a very specific stat that you can work on raising.
And I'm wondering, to step in real quick, I'm wondering if you can measure that with, you said you're bringing it into your class. So it might be good to say, ask yourself, how many Black designers can I come in to Zoom in with my class, with my students to talk about the field? How many Black designers can I share with the students for inspiration, or and then from there kind of keep track of your students' post.
Well, actually, I mean, I do have students, but in this case, I'm taking a class,
Oh, I see.
but still it applies what you're saying. So I just gotta, I've got to come up with like a design thinking roadmap.
Right.
And
Nice.
I might have to ask some people things because this is a different kind of application.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those wicked problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think one of the things that makes wicked problems more approachable is attaching real numbers to them, real statistics.
But I'm sorry, Mark, what were you saying? I just wanted to
Yeah, I guess just break it down into thinking about what out of this big gnarly wicked problem can you measure and have it to where it's in your reach, because we have this big idea of, oh, we need to get more Black designers in the design industry, but that's a big goal, right? So what can you do as an individual within your sphere? So whether it's the class that you're in, whether it's your community, are there design programs within your city or region that you can reach out to and help recruit, or just, there's so many different things. But what I'm saying is just keep it more local as opposed to this global viewpoint. But
Thank you.
and then if you multiply someone like you times 100 times 1,000, then we start to really make some big progress.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing some amazing research and stats in the chat as well. Do we have time for one more shout out, timekeepers, or do we need to go on? We'll have a chance to share this in breakout rooms with your groups as well.
Yeah, probably one more quick one.
Okay, I saw a hand raised from Hassan, I believe. It came up really fast. I may have pronounced the name wrong. Hassan or Hassan? Oh, I am okay. Okay, anyone else want to share really quick? Like 1 minute.
Yeah, I would like to share.
Great.
A friend mentioned this number about creativity and then comparing to, let's say, Einstein. And kids are just enormous creative. And from this research from NASA, it was like 98, 99%. And we know we all grow older and suddenly we are left with only 4 or 5%, which we can see with our own eyes and experience in our work life. I mean, I hope in this community you don't experience it, but all right, we do experience that. And I just can't believe that this number exists.
What's
and
the
there's
label
no
on the
need.
4%?
I'm sorry?
What's the label on the 4%? 4% what?
Adult persons, I think there was an age number there in your 40s or in your 30s, something like that.
Doing
Being creative.
Yeah,
being creative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's something that we can't believe. I refuse to believe it, and especially in this community.
Yeah.
I even don't want to talk about it.
Well, it reminds me of the Ken Robinson video,
Yeah.
the TED video.
Yeah, it's just
If anybody on this call has not seen the Sir Ken Robinson video on creativity, that has to be watched. It's I think the most popular TED video.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
talks about just exactly what you're talking about.
so, there's only 2 figures, and it's really mind blowing. It's mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes me formulating this passion. I'm going to work on this. I did already, but I realize how much I am filled with it to get on this job, to do something about this.
So bringing back play for adults instead of with kids at 4 years old being measured at 99% creativity, and then when they become adults, they have only 4% creativity was the stat.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sorry, my microphone bit me.
Well, then I do a shout out. Guys in this community, you want to help me, please mail me, contact me.
Awesome.
Amazing. Okay. Next slide. What's next?
Yeah, so I'll take it over. So we're gonna kind of shift things around a little bit, and I'm gonna show you some examples of what we refer to as the level of how deep you want to take your passion, right? So we kind of split them up into 3 categories. Totally made this up, so this is not scientific at all. But what Sarah and I have found with just interacting with so many entrepreneurs and colleagues and designers and other people is that we're kind of sensing 3 different areas. There's the foundational area, putting your passion, baking your passion within the thing that you're doing at the very beginning. There's this level of inviting your passion from within, or bringing your passion within an existing entity, and then just the personal level. So I'm going to go over some examples. So Cast Iron Design is a green graphic design company. They started back in 2010 with the sole intent on being a green graphic design company. So that is baked into their DNA. You cannot take that out of Cast Iron Design. If you take that part out of being a sustainable graphic design company, you no longer have Cast Iron Design. And we're good buddies with them. And so we've kind of learned a little bit of kind of the behind the scenes of how they operate. And it's a great filter. Not every client is for them, and they're not for every client. And so they're very adamant about what they stand for on their website, on their social media. And so when you are a client or a potential client, you know exactly what you're getting. And they ask all the big questions from the beginning of a project all the way to the execution of the project. So again, that's at the foundational level of a company. Another company I want to highlight is Creative Reaction Labs. Really badass company out in Ohio. Antoinette Carroll founded this company after the Ferguson uprising, and they educate, train, and challenge Black and Latinx youth to become leaders in designing healthy and radically equitable communities. They have a number of programs. They offer online classes. And again, she founded this company with her passion baked in. So again, you can't separate the two. If you separate the two, they don't exist anymore. From within, I don't know if any of you've seen this. I'm not a sports person, but I saw this pop up on my Twitter around Juneteenth last month. And the LA Lakers made this big, bold statement in just 4 images. So this is the first image that they put up on Twitter. So an observation of Juneteenth. And then the second image that they put together was kind of their point of view, or their flag in the ground, right? So these are what they, they're calling upon their fans in the city to say how it is. And then they have this list here. And then this third slide is their commitment. So they're saying, we recognize that there's things that we can do better, and we're going to do them. And recognizing the fact that this is just step 1. So who knows who started this from within the Lakers organization, but they with this tweet, with these 4 images, they decided to put their values up front and said, hey, we are going to be changing and keep us accountable. And then the last slide, they listed a number of organizations that they're supporting. Another example of a company from within is IDEO, and it's put to my knowledge that a previous speaker during the Wednesday web jam, Ariana Erican Mance, I hope I said that right, who I think is on the call, she mentioned this as well, the commitments of IDEO, and this was put out a few weeks ago, and they've acknowledged that they've had some holes, that they have some things to work on, whether it's community, talent, design, culture. And so if you go to ideo.com/commitments, they again very publicly put out their values up front and recognizing that leadership within the company need to change. And so so again, the last two examples are figuring out how people from within are raising their voices and perhaps going up to their upper management, going to the founders and saying, we need to do better. And then the last level is just personal. And so can someone find ways to influence decisions in your role? And so the example on the right is perhaps when you're kicking off a new design project, maybe set a parameter for success that aligns with one of your ethics, right? Could that be something that you set out at the start of a project and keep that in mind throughout every milestone of that project? Or can you figure out some sort of environmental impact or sustainability efforts that you can strive for while doing this project from the very beginning to the middle to the end? So so these are just some examples of some foundational institutions incorporating their passions into their companies, companies changing from within, from pressure perhaps from employees, and then just some personal examples of how you can approach projects. And so we would love to share, we would love to have you all share in the chat, just really quick, at what level do you feel you're able to act within your current work environment? Do you see yourself raising your voices and encouraging your higher ups to maybe re-examine how they operate internally as a company within their culture? Do you think you'll do a lot more change from within on a personal level when you present yourself to a client, when you're working on a client project? Or for those founders in the room that are just starting companies, how are you baking your purpose into the company that you're creating? So I don't have the chat open, so I'm not seeing anyone's response, but you know, just we'll give people a minute or so to just type in a response to this prompt.
Yeah, so are you so passionate about your purpose that you're willing to, you know, quit your job or start a new company that has your purpose baked in? Are you going to change, you know, clients and projects that you're currently working on, change them from within with strong commitments? Or is this just something more personal that you'll take to all of your projects individually? Nice. Michael sees all of them as embedded within each level to generate systemic change. That's great. And personal on a volunteer level, take to life and projects individually.
Awesome. Great, great. Keep them coming. So we're gonna move on. So yeah, so we're gonna start to get active. We're gonna start to get going on our breakout rooms. So Sarah, if you want to
Yeah.
take over.
So what we're going to do is split up into different rooms with about 3 people, and we'll I guess we'll have to share these prompts in the chat, because basically what we'll have you do, you'll have 20 minutes, share what your passion is with each other, share what your guiding metric or your measurement, what measure you're trying to bring up or down. And then think about, for a personal story, did you have a gut check moment related to your passion? I'll give you an example of what mine is so that you can understand that better. And then decide, what is your level? Is it foundational or from within? Because that will help you with your future action plan. And the future action plan will help us decide and practice what we will say in future scenarios when we have a similar gut check moment. So I'll explain what I mean by that. Let's go to the next slide. So, I described that product manufacturing and pollution and waste was a big problem for me. And so let's say instead of going off and starting a new company that is 100% focused on climate issues, let's say that I decided that my commitment level would be personal. And so I'm still working with clients that are creating consumer products. And so I hear clients looking for a designer. They produce consumer goods. I've chosen the personal level of action. So I'm going to bring to that client conversation in like far-reaching questions that can help make an impact on my passion. So I might ask, that's really cool that you're creating this project. How long will this product last before it needs to be replaced? Or how do consumers dispose of the product when it needs to be replaced? And the client might not have even thought about that. And so that just asking that question alone might make an impact. Another thing I might do is show them examples of products that were made with bioplastic that biodegrade quicker. And so, we might have in our breakout rooms, we might have a script where, what would the client say if I did that? Well, they might say something like, we can't do that. That will make our product too expensive. And then I'm going to practice coming up with a response. So I might be able to make the case that using a more expensive but alternate product material would be a great way to differentiate from competitors. And so maybe you could take the extra money out of the marketing budget because it makes you stand out and be unique. And that helps your brand, and that helps you get ahead so you don't have to do as much marketing spend. So that's my future action plan. Yours might be different based on your level, whether it's foundational, from within, or personal, but just kind of think of it a scenario where in the past somebody, my company was making consumer products and I didn't feel okay with that, but I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything until I finally quit my job. What I could have done different might be something along these lines. And so that's the purpose of creating a future action plan. Does that make sense?
Excellent example. Excellent example.
Cool.
So what we've done, Sarah, I'll just segue into moving people into the breakouts. We've got you in groups of mostly 3. There may be a pair or 2 that you'll be working with. You'll have approximately 20 minutes to go into those breakout rooms and work on your homework in the prompt in the chat. Ezekiel put a link to a Google Doc that you can copy, and it also has Sarah's example in it with the assignment for this breakout activity. And so I'm going to hit the hyperspace button, and you guys are going to all whisk away, and we'll bring you back in approximately 20 minutes. I'll give you a 5-minute warning, and that's when you should start working on your own personal steps. Anything to add, Mark or Sarah? Are we good?
Yeah, just to elaborate on time. Yeah, maybe the first 15 minutes go around each person, maybe for 5 minutes each. If I did my math right, I think that's 15 minutes. And just share your passion, metric, et cetera, et cetera. And then that 5-minute warning mark is when you should sketch out your plan. And that could be done individually. You don't have to share. And if you have any questions, you can ask your group, obviously.
Fantastic. Okay, see you guys in a few. Bye. You have to click accept on the, I'm going to the Zoom thing, meeting breakout thingy. Hello.
Hi. I seem to never get up.
Okay, Anupa, I'll put you in a room. Just 1 second with put you in breakout room 3. See you. All right. I think that actually worked. Woo!
It worked. Isn't that
Just
amazing?
so you know, Ezekiel and anybody else who's interested, if you fire it up early enough, the breakout dialogue, you can move people around, and that's exactly what I did. And I basically put you all in room 1, and that way I got you out of other rooms, and then I saw where it's fairly easy to do, but it takes 3 or 4 minutes, depending on how many people you have. If you have 100 people, it's going to take 5 minutes easy. All right, cool. Tell us.
All right. So Ezekiel had some questions.
Yeah.
Let us know what your purpose is and your stats that you measured and what your level of commitment is going to be.
Yeah, so no stats. I know that I'm very curious about circular economy, but as I started to look into that more intentionally, it's this gigantic ball, hairy ball that it's gonna take me a while to entangle and kind of find a path or a way, and just figuring out like who are like the better sources of information, right? Because I saw number of articles. I even saw like McKinsey's getting into it, which is so I know that at a personal level, I do try to consume products and or services that reduce waste, right? In my home or in my work as much as I can. With a topic this large, though, I was just even at a loss, like how to even pin a number on that. So first question, just back to you two is have you done any work with circular economy, and like how have you narrowed down that one metric? So I can maybe get some inspiration from you all as to how to go about doing that.
Yeah, well, I would actually redirect the question back to you and ask maybe, are there some examples in previous clients or projects that you've worked on where maybe they weren't doing anything related to the circular economy, but you might think of ways that they could retroactively, just as an example?
Well, no, not exactly. I can't think of a project where the client was working directly on that. We did a course where, as a kind of exercise, we introduced the challenge for the sake of learning of how to reduce single-use plastics. This is like a beverage company, so it kind of that sort of like touched or trickled over into their CSR efforts, but it wasn't like something very deliberate that they were doing or investing.
Yeah,
right at
Beverage Companies is a great place to start. That's a great way to narrow it down. Because you can start to look at stats like even slicing it by different beverages, or at least different containers, because you have a huge problem with plastic water bottles. There's a huge problem with cans that aren't being recycled and are just being thrown away. So you could break it down by material, whether it's plastic, whether it's just single-use beverage containers in general. You could also look at to-go cups and straws. We see all the videos about straws getting stuck in turtles' noses, and they just make me cry. But instead of just crying about these videos, what can we actually do about it? And I think once we can get to something that can be measured, then we can start to think about ways that we can do something about it. Otherwise, it's too big, it's too overwhelming. And so in the future, if you were working with a beverage company, you could decide, oh, we didn't actually get to the personal from within or foundational decision, because that'll help your decision too.
Yeah. I think there's also an opportunity to go beyond that and look into local what's the local recycling efforts for those objects? Does it even exist? And if so, what are the capabilities? Because recycling facilities vary. Certain things in certain counties are able to be recycled versus other counties, or at least here in the States. Yeah, and then maybe another thing would be the literal source of these objects, for example, these to-go cups, but the source in which consumers get them. So restaurants and coffee shops and things. So how many of those exist in your area? And could you talk to the founders or the owners of these coffee shops or these restaurants and have a conversation about switching up? So there's different levels in which you can start to tackle this problem. But again, as I mentioned with, I believe her name was Dana, what's the stuff you can measure that's in arm's reach, that you can get traction? Because whether it's climate or environmental issues or things, these are big, gnarly challenges, and they could seem very daunting, and there's so many different angles you can approach it, but it can also just be very overwhelming. And so what can you do on a personal level? It's that age-old bumper sticker on the back of the 30-year-old Volvo that says act local, think global, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what's beneficial about breaking this down into, okay, I'm not going to focus on all circular economy because that's too big. I'm going to focus on beverage companies and reusable containers or biodegradable containers. And you can even pick one of the examples that Mark was talking about. Is it going to be local shops giving to-go cups, or do you want to work directly with the manufacturers of single-use bottles? And what we're really trying to get at here, I think designers and design thinkers are able to think in a more complex, strategic systems way. So we can think about getting larger in our actions than just, I bring a reusable container to the coffee shop and I get my coffee not in a disposable to-go cup, but in a little thermos that I then go home and wash at the end of the day, and that's my routine. That's great. But what can you do as a design thinker to make that change more systemic? In other words, maybe you could, one thing is if you work in an office with a lot of people and you show them by example that you're doing this routine with your thermos every day, then that can help influence all of your coworkers to do that same routine. If you don't, or right now we're all working from home, so we don't have a lot of influence that way. There are all sorts of ways that you could influence local shops. You could encourage them to, if they don't already, have a program where you get a little bit of money off for bringing in a reusable container. A lot of coffee shops are already doing that. So you can just give them examples and be like, oh, Pete's or Phil's in San Francisco gives 50 cents off if you bring in your own reusable container. And if you sort of, as a consumer, have a campaign that you bring to all of your shops that you frequent and they all adapt it, then look at that changing more systemically, just other consumers through that program.
So can I ask a question? Because one thing that I really like about this approach and your kind of philosophy is this idea of breaking it down, making it small enough so you can do something. But with this idea that if we all do something small, if you add it all up together, you create a big change, right? So it is this, that I like that, and I totally believe in that idea. How are you also thinking about, so I get the idea, like, all right, so now we need to make it systemic, because it's always systemic, and because when you think about you just a small product that harms nature, climate, turtles, and we don't want to get up their nose. How do we then, and we want to make it systemic, the danger is that then it becomes quite big again, because then it's like, oh, because the system is not as simple as just straws. It is usually there's all these causes, there's cause and effect, and there's the industry, and there's bigger, then doors open and you're like, this whole world, like, oh my God, and how can I change this? Okay, power system, what have you. How can you, so I very much believe in what you're saying, but also in creating a story so we can organize ourselves because we believe in this. You know, we have this common narrative, the common story. And I think that is also something that not just designers, but people who are storytellers, who are able to create a narrative and a story around it so we can organize ourselves accordingly. Right. So, and how does that, so because I come from more like design artist kind of background. To me, when it becomes when you talk about making it measurable and looking at data points, my brain goes like, I don't like that. I don't want, what do you mean? That's corporate talk. What are you talking about? How do you, so seriously, I go like, really? Measurable? Why? I believe in this. I see it. I understand. I feel it. This is a pattern. I get it. I want to just move this. What do you want me to measure it? Like, oh, well, now I'm like, where am I going? So
Yeah.
is that something you can relate to? Is it?
Measuring these things is hard. It's super hard. And it does force us to focus down on one thing. Like, you know, we're all, like I said, we're all systemic thinkers, and it's not just straws. It's not just cups. It's not just plastic water bottles. It's all of it. But what change we can actually impact as single individuals is probably just one of those things right now. And so with each project, maybe your whole company is about straws. I don't know. That's why we ask, you know, what's the level? Is it going to be a foundational change where you create a ban straws in your local city company?
Right.
Or is it going to be something from within where you make a stand on straws in your current company and work that way? Or is it going to be personal where you take something about disposable blah, blah, blah to each project that you work on? And then from there, you can decide what the measurable goal is. But I think what you're saying, like, how do we organize ourselves around this goal? It all comes down to this measurable goal, whether that's the number of straws that end up in the ocean, or the number of cups, or the number of disposable single-use items that end up in landfills every year. And you tape that number to the wall and you're like, does this next project have a chance to impact that number and move it in the direction that I want it to go? And that's like a kind of gut check thing that you can do with every decision, every major decision in your career. And that is really how we end up bringing our purpose to our work.
Well, I have a question, and I'll direct it to the three of you, because I think there are moments where I see the value in measurement, and I also see measurement being persuasive for some people. But just speaking about persuasion in general, like I remember some friends of mine had a health startup, and they were offering some companies like savings of like 50% in some expenses, and the companies were like, no, we're just used to doing it this way, we're good. So sometimes those numbers are not as persuasive. That have you had instances or moments that you can share about where you've crafted a persuasive argument, you know, with or without numbers? Like, how did that look like?
You know, a lot of this measuring stuff I've grabbed from Katie Patrick's book, How to Save the World. And some of the examples that she has in there, I think the example that you just gave was one of measuring business goals. So things that affect the business's bottom line, giving a discount to businesses, measuring views to our website, measuring conversion to our product. Those are great. Those are, you know, capitalism has been fueled on measuring those numbers since the beginning of capitalism. But the measurements that we're talking about is different than your business goals. The measures that we're talking about are the real world what is actually going on in the world and what is it that we're trying to impact outside of whatever company is doing what. And so the other benefit, I think, of putting that number of straws that get thrown in the ocean or whatever the number is, you know, taping that to the wall and making that your guiding metric, is you can then create sub goals and milestones and metrics from that for like one approach that we think will drive that number of straws being thrown into the ocean down. But that's what we do as design thinkers, is we come up with hypotheses that we think will have an impact on that number. And then we have to figure out how to measure if we're correct in that hypothesis. And if we're not, we have to go back to the drawing board and do it again. We ideate and define and prototype and test, right?
I guess I'm trying to ask is more like moments where you have to change minds and hearts, where the numbers just don't matter to the leader because they're too comfortable or used to doing things one way. Where you have to make more creative arguments, perhaps, or are there moments where you found yourself doing that and being successful at it, or not? Sometimes it's just really hard to do.
Yeah, my approach, if I were to be put in a situation, and we haven't yet, but if I were to be put in that situation, my approach would be to have me not do the talking, but have their customers do the talking. So if I'm sensing some leader who's maybe a bit a bit stuck in their ways, then I will do my research. I will interview, I'll seek out information from their customers, and then basically just present them their stories, those responses. And then if that leader, hopefully they'll hear those stories, see those stories, and make decisions based on that. Because at the end of the day, that leader wants to make sure that their customers are happy. That would be my approach. So it wouldn't be me presenting facts and data until my eyes bleed. You know, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to have your customer say something. That's how I would approach it.
Yeah.
And one last thing too, Arna, to address your comment. Yeah, I'm not a numbers guy either. You know, I went to art school, and numbers just don't sit well with me. I mean, I'm okay with it now. I've grown up a bit, but yeah, I guess one thing to think about would be have someone else measure things for you. So if you're doing an action and you're just like, I don't know how to measure this, whatever, but if you find other people that are doing it and you start to dig into what they're doing, and if it's relatable enough, and then perhaps they're the ones that put the numbers together, like, oh, cool, okay, well, if they save this much money, or if they did this much work, or if that data showed this on their end, it's probably going to be aligned with what I'm doing. And that might inspire you to maybe dive deeper into trying to find those data points for yourself. So, I mean, people are measuring this stuff all the time. So I'm just wondering if you can maybe use someone else's work to inspire you.
We have 30 seconds and everybody's going to be coming back to the main room. One thing that I think, I wasn't part of the conversation, that somebody called me out to help them in one of the rooms, but I think connecting emotionally to people, I think about the CEO who doesn't care about pollution, who works for a big beverage company, but somehow if you can get them to emotionally connect to the issue, that's the most powerful way to doing it, right? Like,
yeah.
Which I hope those customer stories do that. That's exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but it can be more complicated than that.
No, it's easy, Arna. It's easy.
Yeah, sorry. I'll share a quick story. So I was thinking about buying locally, right? Because so for instance, a t-shirt. I want to buy a t-shirt that is kind of made locally, for instance, as an example. So then someone the other day said, well, yeah, but because I don't want people to, or you're sending me, right, sorry. No, not gonna, Mark, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, so I don't want to buy it from whatever Zara or H&M, or because they have people work in Bangladesh and they don't pay them a lot of money, and there's child laborers, and etc. The whole thing. So I don't want to be part of that. But then someone said, yeah, but if you don't buy that T-shirt, that person in Bangladesh is going to lose their job, and then they don't have anything anymore. So basically, all right. So then I thought, oh boy, so we have to change the whole system. But then someone else said to me, and who studied, economists said, well, no, you're not responsible for that. If you stop buying those t-shirts from the fashion industry, they need to change their system. Don't try to, as a consumer, make it small and just do what's right, and you'll change the system accordingly. 15, 14, 13 seconds, 12. Yeah, so that's just my so there's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's why we ask whether you want to change things at a foundational level or personal or something in between. You know, back to the big corporation, if I am doing a foundational change, I won't even work with that corporation. If they're not willing to, if they don't care about pollution, I won't work with them.
Right.
If I'm not willing to take that pay cut, I have to support my family. Maybe I can only do things on a personal level. Then that's the risk I'm taking, is that you know, maybe the corporation that I'm working for won't listen, because there's only so much I can do. And that's the risk that I take of not doing a total career change and maybe not having as many clients, right? That's the toss up.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah, and one quick thing, Arna, before we dive into inviting people to share out. Yeah, you're bringing up the age-old like dilemma of just, it's like, I mean, you should know this, the story of the kid with the in the dike putting one finger in one hole.
That's an American story. That's not a Dutch story, by the way. It's made up by an American. It never happened. But anyway, the dike, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's just, you try to do one thing over here, then you're not addressing this thing. It's just, yeah, at the end of the day, you got to pick your battles and feel and do what you feel is right. So, but yeah, you bring up something that I wrestle with all the time. If I spend my money over here, it's not going there. If I do this and that, so it's,
yeah,
we can only do so much.
Well, Yun Yen just quoted Eleanor Roosevelt saying, "Do what you can where you are with what you have."
Yep,
and I like that idea.
Yep.
So don't feel guilty for everything. So, but do what you can. And if we all, and to your point, what you were saying, if we all do something, adding all that up, so you don't responsible for the whole thing, but you're responsible for what is in front of you, and do the right thing. If we all do that, adding all that up, it kind of changes things, right? So
collective action.
So we have six more minutes until we're at the top of the hour, and then we'll go to the backstage. But I just wanted to hand over to you, Sarah and Mark, to do a couple of maybe popcorn feedback from some of the people.
Yeah, anyone want to share out quickly what they talked about in their group? Maybe share out your passion and metric, or maybe your future action plan, or maybe your gut story, or all the above. And in 60 seconds. Any interesting conversations, any aha moments, epiphanies? And we can dive more into this in backstage, but just wanted to give everyone an opportunity.
Yeah,
I can share a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was showing this stat on, I'll actually try to post it here again on the chat, because I think when we share something on the breakout rooms, it doesn't come to everyone else. But it's about the volume of textiles that gets thrown away every year. And James in our session was saying that his wife during this lockdown suggested, why don't we do some cleanup in the house and think about all the clothes we have? And he said he ended up feeling, can I share this, James? Somewhere out there. Yeah, I think it's a simple thing.
Yeah,
to share.
sure.
Yeah. And it's a lovely statement. Like they ended up like James was thinking like, well, perhaps we'll have a luggage full of clothes to take away and give away. And he said, well, we ended up filling up three times our minivan with clothes, which was, he totally never expected that. And James, can you also share the story about when you saw the line of cars that were giving to that institution?
Yeah, so in the States, the common place to donate the clothes is the Goodwill.
And Goodwill in DC opened, I don't know, a month ago only. And we were kind of watching because we had this pile of clothes, and we actually had put them, the first load, in the car. And then we saw on Facebook that they were opening, and we thought, oh, we'll go by there. But we weren't really going there. We were going to pick up some food nearby. But we drove by the Goodwill, and there was probably 500 cars in line to drop off things. And it came out of the Goodwill parking lot, down the street, off the ramp, and all the way down the freeway. So we couldn't see the end of the line.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's a powerful image on what should we do also about producing more recyclable textiles, because so much of it in Zara's business model is all about making clothes that have the duration of basically yogurt. So it's something quite strange.
It is. And there's a stat in the chat says about 15% of these clothes are actually resold at Goodwill, I'm guessing. Because it says 85% of them are all thrown away or burned, like they can't be used again.
Yeah, I would love to share a story, maybe in backstage, a similar story about visualizing waste. It's a story a friend of mine told me. But well, thanks, Pedro and James, for sharing that. Just so I want to keep be mindful of time for those who do need to jump off at the top of the hour. Yeah, so thanks for joining us again. One last thing, last week we shared a raindrop link with you all. I just went ahead and made that same raindrop link into a bit.ly link. So Sarah and I have been, over the week, been adding to it. So you'll see websites to articles and examples and some resources that might help you all on this topic. And a few Google Docs that we created to help you dive deeper. Pay attention to, there's a link in there to a Google Doc that says passion and work tips, I believe. And it's about a 2-page of other ways you can address this topic. So we didn't have a whole lot of time on this call to dive into that. So that's why we created that public Google Doc. So go to this bit.ly link. And with bit.ly, you have to keep it, it's case sensitive. So it's uppercase on my screen, but type it in lowercase. But you can definitely bookmark that link, because Sarah and I are going to continue to add to it for ourselves as well as other people. And if you have anything you would like to add to that, let us know. Feel free to email us. So yeah, so I guess, I don't know, I don't have the time in front of me. My time's not on my screen, so I don't know if it's officially backstage time, but more than welcome to hang out with us. More than welcome to continue to keep talking. I'll stop sharing my screen in a minute and we can just have a longer conversation. So Sarah, I don't know if you want to say any parting words.
Well, that's it. I hope some of this got you thinking about ways that you can approach your passion and purpose in your work.
Absolutely. So thank you, Sarah and Mark, for taking us through this really super interesting and important topic of purpose as designers. And just regret I wasn't here last week. I missed that piece, but this was super interesting today. Next week, and thanks also to the crew. You guys do a great job always. And next week, before we go to backstage, which we're going to do, as many of you know, we'll have another half an hour of discussion. Yin, who's our guest next week? I think we might know this person.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. He's a fun guy, and he's got really cool perspectives on life and play. Should I tell his name?
Do tell us.
It's going to be Colin Skelton from South Africa. So Colin, you are still in this meeting. We are looking forward for next week, how you are going to take us by the hand through embodied play. And how does that sound? If it sounds weird in your ears, you should come this is definitely the moment for you to come.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
Go ahead, Colin.
No, Mark, you in as well reminded me of a silly joke. Do you guys want to hear it?
Well, let me just before you do that, let me just
That's
say
a cliffhanger.
officially, we are in the backstage now. And Colin, over to you, and you can give us the funny joke, hopefully.
Silly joke. Funny is debatable.
Okay.
Why did the mushroom always go out at night?
I don't know.
He was a
Why
fun
did the
guy.
mushroom?
He was a fun guy.
He
There we
was
go.
a fun guy.
Terrible.
I love it.
Joel got it.
I have a passion for really, really bad jokes.
Yeah, that's it. That's getting up there. Well done. Okay, we're in the backstage. Let's rock the conversation.
So I want to share that story now that we're in backstage before I forget. But it's not a mushroom story, unfortunately. So there's an architect professor at some college, doesn't matter. First day of class, he said, and it was a Monday, he told his students, I want you to collect all your trash, anything that you personally consume, any trash that you have, put it in a clear plastic bag and bring it to class on Friday. So they did it. And so students came in on Friday with the clear plastic bag. He taught his normal class, didn't at once mention the bags that they all brought in. And at the end of the class, a student raised their hand and said, hey, what about these bags? Oh, sorry, forgot. Why don't you do it another week and bring it in on Friday? Students did it for another week. And again, that Friday he taught class, didn't mention the bag. And again, the student raised her hand, asked about the bag. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. Do it one more week. I'll make a note to talk about it first thing next Friday. So another week passes. And he purposely does not mention it. And the students at this point were getting pissed off. They were like, why are we lugging these bags around? And his response was, I want you all to see your footprint over the course of a few weeks. And some of these students had 2 bags actually. And this was an eye opener for them because they had no idea why they were collecting it. They were just collecting it. And so he basically said, you don't throw things away. These things stay around. And so in this case, they're staying in your possession and you're visually seeing the amount of trash that you're producing over 3 weeks. And then the students started to really think about the impact that they have when they consume stuff. Yes, some of those things were recycled that they did not put in the bag, but just the landfill trash that they were collecting was just so mind-blowing to them. And then throughout the rest of the semester, he made an emphasis on how does the work that you're doing, what's the waste how much waste are you producing? And so it was a really interesting kind of thought experiment that he did that just helped young students visualize their trash and made them realize the impact that they have over a course of a few weeks.
Yeah. Has anyone ever tried to go zero waste? That's a thing that I did also when I was having my climate epiphany, is I tried to go zero waste, and it is so hard, but it's a great exercise. It's very similar to what you're talking about, Mark.
And so bringing it back to measuring, you would measure how much waste you produce. You can physically see the amount of trash that you're either producing or that you're even trying to not produce. So the zero waste stuff.
Yeah, the classic zero waste inspiration people keep all of their waste that they don't recycle or compost in a mason jar. And, most of them, when they're showing off, they have this mason jar full of trash and they're like, this was all of the trash that I produced in a year. And so that takes, a huge amount of change, and they just do that, as inspiration to try and model the behavior that they want to see, just to see if other people can do it. And some people manage to pull it off, but it's big, and it really, for me, it helped see how cultural waste and trash is. You cannot buy anything at the grocery store without producing more waste. You have to basically make all of your own food. You have to, do all sorts of changes to try and reduce your waste.
We had Bear Johnson, the queen of zero waste at our TEDx conference a couple of years ago in Munster, Germany. And I thought, I was discussing with her before, and she seemed really arrogant to me and said, oh, this and that and that. And I thought, well, you know, we're in Germany, we're doing a lot of recycling, 80% recycling quota, etc. And she wouldn't respond to that. And then we were discussing, and she was really explaining to us what she was doing and how she was doing it. And since then, it has stuck with us, with our family, with our TEDx team. My daughter's very much into zero waste. We're buying bulk goods. We're thinking and discussing every piece of clothes, and it had such a big impact. And you go passing it on. After that, you can't go anywhere and grab like plastic bags to wrap groceries. It's just impossible.
Yeah, so I want to talk about like systemically what's happening there is, you know, the zero waste person that you talked to who did a TED talk, she made that commitment at a foundational level to completely redesign her lifestyle to go zero waste and then to be public about it so that she's inspiring families like you. And that's the impact that she's making. It's not about the impact that she's making on her own personal life, which is nice, it's great, but what can we do and how far are we willing to take it so that we are impacting other people?
Greg, you had something that you wanted to share earlier. Do you still want to share?
Sure. So what I was just going to say was that I didn't get to attend the previous one. So, you know, the homework and all that stuff was a complete unknown to me. But there were two sort of major issues that I was exploring in the breakout room and focused on, well, climate change being one, and also men's, I guess the best way to say it is like communication or emotional connection. That is definitely not a thing. Like we as men are just told you don't have any emotions except basically anger and lust. And if you have any other emotions, squash them. Otherwise you are a, I'm trying to think of the appropriate way to phrase this.
Unmanly man.
Terrible, awful human being. Yeah. And so, you know, helping men, sorry, let me go back to the prompt. Since I hadn't done any of the homework, just off the cuff, a couple of different stats that had occurred to me were like men's suicide rates in the States. That's, I think it's like 8 times what women's is or something, you know, roughly like that. Also, particularly within a certain age range, men's unemployment is actually much higher than women's. And then also from the breakout room, one of the things that, or sorry, one of the other people said that that's also something that plays into burning out and, you know, leaving work or changing jobs or that kind of thing, which I don't have a stat for, but I could probably find one. And then what was the other piece? Oh, the other piece was then kind of responding to a likely complaint or a likely, no, we can't do that. And so basically I was just thinking of saying something like, you know, we should have possibly me or someone else, but whoever, you know, come in and teach, here's ways to connect to your emotions, men, and here's ways that it can be safe. And then kind of similar to Sarah's example of what, we don't have the time, the money, you know, maybe that's even just something we don't believe is useful. And then saying, well, let's take it from the development budget for the designers or the engineers or the whoever, you know, instead of sending them to a conference, leaving entirely aside COVID problems, you know, instead of sending them to a conference where they're going to learn some technical skills, let's help them learn something that would make them better collaborators and better coworkers, rather than just, you know, yeah, let's level up their technical skills. And also, you know, well, how many people have we had to fire? How many people have we had leave the company? And, you know, maybe I can point to some numbers that say 30% or whatever of these things are because of emotional sort of issues.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to share.
You were in the room with Yussi, and you is that
Correct.
Right? Yeah, because that's
yes.
I jumped in there and we were talking about that for a while. So yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting conversation. I just want to throw this question out to Sarah and Mark and anybody else who wants to respond. As designers or professionals in our work, the difference between, and I don't know if it's like a continuum, a spectrum or whatever, between taking action that is personal, that's working on your own personal action, versus taking action where, and it's like this question of Arna was bringing up about working on the system, but where where you work, you're trying to leverage the power of other people, right? So for example, as designers, should we choose to work on reducing waste at a project level, or should we try to influence the CEO and the C-suite of a company?
Yeah, good question. My personal philosophy is we're going to need change from all levels, all sides, top down, bottom up. But you yourself need to figure out where you want to dive in. Do you want to go into the shallow water and just kind of ease into it? You want to jump off the deep end and have at it? You know, there's this idea of individual action versus collective action. I mean, but I personally believe that you know, we can't expect any sort of external revolution without an internal revolution within ourselves, right? So, and I'm stealing that from a Hindu philosopher that I read, Jiddu Krishnamurti. You know, we demand these changes in society from governments, things like that, right? But we have to change within ourselves, and we have to look deep within ourselves. So Greg, to go back to your point about men and emotions and connection and things, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I really truly believe that we have a toxic masculinity problem in the US that we are not talking enough about. That is, I think, at the core of a lot of our issues: police brutality, white supremacy, things like that. And so I just posted a link to a trailer to an amazing documentary called The Mask We Live In. I highly recommend it. You can rent it on Vimeo for like $4. It's a misrepresentation produced project. I don't know if you've heard of that production company, but they do a lot of amazing documentaries. And but yeah, I feel like, because unfortunately a lot of men lead companies and institutions, and the fact that they might have a hard time, not all of them, I'm not trying to paint a broad stroke, but you know, most men don't have the language or the know-how to even tap in emotionally to themselves. And so they take it out on other people. They have this sense of power. They have this sense of, I know everything. I can't look weak. I can't look less than my constituents. So they have to put on this front. And so that makes the work of us a lot harder when we're going up against that, when we don't have leaders within the company that are willing to say, I don't know, or I'm sorry, or hey, why don't you take it over? So there's a lot of factors going on in this with this particular topic, but yeah, it's tough. But I firmly believe, just pick your battles, like do what you feel is right, and at the end of the day, go to bed knowing that you're doing something, you're contributing something positive in the world. And if more people can do that collectively, then I think we can create change. But I think it all starts from within.
Yeah, and it's where do you have influence? I think a lot of things that were brought up just about toxic masculinity, there's a lot of ways to influence that problem culturally. And I think what we're talking about kind of at a meta level today is more than working on your own relationship to emotions and connection. I'll also say that women have adapted toxic masculinity practices, especially when moving into leadership positions at work. I have worked with women managers who lead like toxic masculine leaders. So it's not just a men versus women thing, but it's a cultural thing about what we perceive as leaders. And so maybe one of the ways that you can influence that is taking a management training class, or having your company take a management training class that is actually a connect with your emotions class, right?
So I want to just, Sarah, sorry, I would just, it's perfect connection to what Howard is doing. He's connecting with his daughter. I just spotlighted his video.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, because we are backstage, by the way. This seems super, super serious. But I know there's some conversations and things that are going on between Mimp and Zimena, and people are having fun. It's great to see.
It's beautiful.
And one last thing off of Greg's comment, and then we can maybe shift focus to something lighter. it is backstage, but you know, it's interesting how companies encourage professional development within their employees. I'm wondering if, and this is someone who's never had a full-time job, so I don't know what it is to work for a large institution, but I'm wondering how much of that should be focused on personal development as a person, as a human being, that can then be transformed in ways that will lend itself well to a company, but also more importantly to their home and to their communities. So I'm just wondering if personal development within companies could be a thing, and if it's not, could it be, and if it is already, could it be more of a thing? So,
well, hopefully that, Mark, hopefully that is going to change somewhat naturally through the workforce that's coming up has different values than the workforce that my parents were in and the workforce that I'm in, right? I mean, and our values are different. So hopefully people take personal responsibility, which I think is exactly what you were saying earlier about where do you act. But it also is leadership thing to me. I mean, the leaders have to recognize that this issue and all of these issues that are systemic are things that they need to lead on, right? And it's not just leading to make money, it's leading to fulfill people at different levels. So I think we should hand it over to Howard and let's have Howard turn on his audio so we can get a full picture of this amazing, nope.
Yeah, so we're wait, darling. So this is the baby. The baby, where's the baby, darling? Okay, she wants to draw more dinosaurs. That's why. It's
awesome.
it's dino drawing time with this is the mommy dinosaur. Yeah. She's into Land Before Time lately, so yeah, keeps her same.
Is this the NASA test? Are we doing the NASA testing now?
Tell us what that is, Arna.
Yes, it is. Let us all really, really remember this picture of Howard and his girl. Yeah, this is what we aim for.
Nice.
Yeah. So I get to draw the dino, and she gets to color it. That's our contract.
And you are a brave man using those Sharpies.
Yeah, she owns all my tools. That's why she's a young designer in training.
Yeah, that is so sweet.
When I was a toddler, I would scribble on every single piece of paper in the house. Even my mother's cookbooks.
Yeah.
I remember a family friend when I was still living in California, so this was below 8 years old, before I moved back. She took us to see The Land Before Time, the premiere of it. It was pretty amazing. That was my first movie in a theater.
Now we all know how old Mark is.
Yes, do the math.
Yeah, I can't do the math in my head there, Mark. How old are you? No, I'm just kidding. Right on. Wow, this has been a good discussion. Any other thoughts from?
Yes, I would like to bring something. I don't know if you know the commentary called Wasteland. I already put the link, but I can do it again. It has been done in 2010, and it's based in what garbage can be transformed in art. So it has been done in Rio de Janeiro, in one of the largest landfills with the persons that work there between the garbage, and they just begin to put garbage together, and it created a piece of art that went to, I think it was to London, to an auction. And so it's an amazing documentary, and it shows, it's done with the people that works every day of their lives between the garbage. The first guy, there is an association of people working there, and so it's the dream of doing something and showing that job what they are doing. I'm going to put you here the link because it's absolutely amazing. And so it's a way of, in Portuguese, it's called lixo extraordinário. So it's extraordinary garbage. It's so beautiful. And so it's the other side of the things. Even though it's ugly, even though it's dirty, even though it's garbage, it's possible to show the other way, and what can we do with it? And what you say is that showing how they do it, it's passion, it's effort, it's believing, it's a dream. And then what they call is that during the film, they recycle themselves. So if you have the opportunity to see, it's absolutely amazing. It's going to tears when the guy from Brazil that he never have been away from Rio de Janeiro, and then is in an auction, I think it's London, and then they sell the piece of art for an amazing amount of money, and it goes there directly to all of them, to the associations, and he just called his mother to say, "Mom, we have come to this, we sold the art." I'm going to put it here. If you want to look, it's amazing.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Awesome. So we have a couple more minutes. Yun, you wanted to talk to our tribe a little bit about something, yes?
Yeah, well, dear little tribe over here. In the tribe, there's another tribe, and they call themselves the WWJ social mafias. And who are they? Who are they? They are Wiebke, yeah. Jenny, yo. Nachket, where is he? We've got Anupa. You are here somewhere, Anupa, I know that. Donna and Jimena. And they help us, the crew, in organizing, structuring the whole world of social media. We can't do it alone. So that's very good. Thank you for this, guys. And the first act is that we have a Facebook page that I'm going to copy right now in the chat. So there you can find us, and you are so welcome to visit and share all the posts we have. There it is. Okay, so follow us there as well if you're on Facebook. And if you're not on Facebook, we are still on LinkedIn. And there's an Instagram account as well. Jimena, help me. Where is our account? Our Instagram account.
At Wednesday Web Jam.
Do we have a TikTok?
Not yet, Arne, not yet.
I want to do my dancing.
Should we have?
I have some winter web wiggles.
I think after today's suggestion, maybe Arne will be the first one then to post.
All right, cool. I will.
Okay.
I will.
So help us to grow this community and stay in touch. Yeah.
Thank you, Yun. And thanks again, Sarah and Mark, for today. Yeah, it's been awesome exploring with you guys. And this summer, I think this summer, as we're already in the summer in the middle of July, we're going to be probably continuing to experiment with subjects and with ideas and maybe even tools and formats and things like that. So you guys all on this screen here are all some of our dearest friends in the WebJam community. So if you have ideas, feel free to reach out to one of the crew through any of these channels. And we've got plenty of room to do things for the rest of the year. So we want to keep going. Feed us some ideas, and if you want to jump in and volunteer, let us know. We're happy to have you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us today. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks for inviting. We hope this was helpful and useful. And I want to acknowledge one thing, and I'm having a chat with someone privately about it. So this is a larger topic, but I'll just say this about the topic that we've been chatting about. I want to just say that I personally recognize the fact that I'm able to do this kind of work. It hasn't been easy putting my passions to practice. You know, I've been up and down and all over the place in my professional career, and so I don't have any kids. I don't have a family, so I'm able to take more risks than most. And so just wanted to acknowledge that as well. And so again, I think it all comes down to the personal. How much can you put into the workplace, and when it comes to bringing your passion into it and affecting change from within, while doing it in a way that might not get you fired, or might not put you in some sort of financial stress, especially if you do have a family. So but I firmly believe that we all can step up and do something. And the fact that Sarah and I focus 100% on climate, we feel is the biggest threat right now to our existence. And so whether you're a designer, whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, a professor, any field, we feel like everyone has something to contribute. And so imagine a world where we live in, where everyone is bringing a purpose to the work that they do. So that's the future I want to live in. And I can't wait to see this younger generation below us take leadership over the next couple decades, and create a corporate environment as well as a personal environment where purpose really is at the core of how they live and how they function. So
Yeah, someday I
Thank
hope that
you.
there won't be as much of a choice between supporting your family and working for something that you care about. We hope that it'll be the same thing. You know?
it just is. It's existing.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks everyone for showing up and hanging out with us. And I guess I'm being pushed off stage.
Cue up the outro.
Is that the outro? Do we have an outro?
Now we got an outro. How about that?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Great, Charles. All right, guys. It's awesome. Have a great week. See you next week.
All right, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you guys.
Bye, everybody.
See you next week.
Here, this is our next. This is the TikTok. This is going to be the TikTok, right? This is my. All right, we can cut this off the YouTube video. No worries.
No, we cannot. No, we cannot.
No, we can't. All right.
She knows how to sit that thing all right. Really all right now. I'm gonna.
Oh, thank God. Goodbye.